Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Avand from GDI Consulting, and together with Muge Carsley, we will be hosting this webinar for you. Today's webinar will be about what can be done before the full OASIS Plus RFP is out. We will deal with the technical details of the proposal in another separate webinar, which will be held next week, and we will be sending you the links for those. This webinar is essentially about the steps you can take and the reason why you should actually start now so that you have enough time to prepare for the proposal. Some administrative notes before we start. The webinar is being recorded and the link will be sent to you within 24 hours. So in case you have to leave early, we'll hold a Q&A session at the end. So feel free to send all the questions you have. And even if we don't have enough time at the end, we'll go through the questions separately and send you the responses by email. So it would be good if you provide your emails in your questions. You can also download the presentation slides on the right-hand side of this webinar system. Now, some announcements. First of all, as I'm a soccer fan due to my European background, I wanted to congratulate everyone on the U.S. soccer team win in their match in the Soccer World Cup in Qatar. But aside from that, first of all, 2 future webinars on the proposal details are going to, and how you can maximize your scores, will be held on December 7th for small businesses at 3 p.m. for small businesses, and for unrestricted, which would be medium and large businesses, that would be 3 p.m. on December 8th. So Wednesday and Thursday next week, small businesses and unrestricted, we're going to deal with the details of the proposal development and how to prepare it. And as I said, we'll be sending you the links to register there. Some companies might need a pre-qualification done for them. In other words, they're not sure if they can actually participate in OASIS Plus, considering their background and their projects. We have a service that provides you with a questionnaire to be filled out, and then one of our proposal managers will review that questionnaire and will prepare a comprehensive report and send it back to you, and then call you and answer any questions you might have. So, and that you can enroll in that program, again, on the right-hand side of the webinar system, in case you need pre-qualification for your OASIS Plus bid. Just a very short intro about our company. I will skip most of this. You can later look at this if you watch the video for it again, or if you want to download the slides. So I will skip about our past performance overall and agencies that we have worked with. But I want to discuss a little bit about our capabilities on self-scoring. We have worked on a number of projects ever since this self-scoring system started to go on and be used by the government. As you can see, we have we have had successful self-scoring proposals for OASIS, both unrestricted and small business. And you see the numbers, the Astro, small business, and OTSP, other than a small business, which would be the large and emerging companies, and HCATS, Alliant, and a number of others. Polaris, obviously they haven't announced the winners yet, so don't have numbers. And we've held a number of training sessions for APMP chapters and other clients. So the range of clients, we have worked with very small businesses all the way to very large defense contractors and universities. One of them is top 10 defense contractors. So We are, in fact, experts in maximizing your score, ensuring compliance. And essentially, this webinar, we are trying to provide you with whatever experience we've had and lessons learned during these exercises so that you can actually use them in your proposal development. And from here on, I give back the microphone to Muge, so she can go from here on. Muge, please.
Thank you, Ab. Hello, everybody. So we're going to do a quick synopsis of what it's going to take to get you guys all qualified for OASIS. Our outline is we're going to give you a short intro to the self-scoring systems, talk about the domains, the competitive system, the difference that time will make, and the minimum requirements, how to get prepared, lessons learned. We'll go over what can go wrong, and then we'll open it up for Q&As, and we see some questions coming in, and we'll start answering them as much as we can. Moving forward, okay, so self-scoring. This is the time to get started right now. The government has provided drafts based on using those self-scoring sheets that the government provided. You need to really start to assess yourself based on some of those rules that are already put out in the RFP. You can fill out that spreadsheet, which will be easier. You can also do it online in the Symphony site that's going to be used to upload all your documents. You do need to register first. And once you start sort of putting in the minimum things, the system is really nicely developed where it will start auto-calculating the scores for you. But in the meantime, you can definitely use the self-scoring spreadsheet. And you're going to substantiate those claims, with the documents that's going to be required with proper highlighting. So what does that mean? This is not a document where you're going to have a lot of technical writing, but you want to make sure that if you want to get credit, let's say for a past experience or relevant experience, those documents have to be placed together in a very important, in an organized manner and highlighted. You need to have your Word documents that's fully signed with the date that it was awarded. It needs to show the value. It needs to have the PWS associated with it, and specifically to the NAICS codes. Every information that they're going to ask for will need to be highlighted and commented using their acronyms, if you will, or they'll have a word selection on what needs to be put into the comment boxes. And what does that do? The government opens up your documents after it's uploaded, and they go specifically to the comments and they run down to make sure you've captured all of those points that they want, evaluated to make sure it's there. And then for the administrative documents, as we said, it's a lot about putting these documents together, PPQ, so questionnaires, your certificates and things like that. So you don't have very much of technical writing, but it is very important that these documents are put in a very compliant manner. The government goes in and starts reviewing it for compliance, and on these GWACs, there's a huge turnout. Compliance is everything. So if the government immediately notices something, it could be as small as if you missed a NAICS code. You'll immediately be thrown out. So they're going to check all of for compliance, they're going to make sure all the substantiations that you are claiming why you want the score, they're going to go in and review to make sure that it agrees with their scoring system, and they're going to also make sure the scoring matches theirs. Awards are made to those companies that are over the minimum threshold. We typically see in past GWACs at least above 92 to 95%. As close to as you can come to the top score is going to give you a seat on the GWAC. This is what the pre-qualification requirements look like. Sorry if the screen is a little bit small, but these are all within the draft documents provided by the government. So where it says, the maximum score, what we have done in the past with all of our clients, we start out ahead of time and make sure we maximize it. This is the time you go through and you look at all of the quality of your documents, you look at the relevancies, and you want to make sure, okay, how can I maximize that score? If you're shortfalling somehow, this is the time to maybe start thinking about teaming partners. What can I do to get the maximum score? With such a competitive GWAC, and OASIS is very predominantly used by the government, everybody wants a seat on this GWAC, and you want to make sure that you do whatever you can to get the maximum score possible. And that's going to include everything from your experience, your management, the quality of your past performance, meaning your past CPARs or your PPQs should all have exceptional, very good. You don't want to have anything below satisfactory. The higher the quality of your past performance, the higher your score is. Do you have experience with multiple federal agencies? Meaning, do you have a task order that was issued under another IDIQ or a GWAC? Those all get you scores. For your systems, did you have a DCAA compliant accounting system? Do you have approved purchasing systems? Do you have ISO certificates? These are all areas where you're going to be able to maximize your score. So a little background on it. OASIS Plus, obviously put out by the GSA. It is a multiple award GWAC. The estimated value this time around is over $60 billion is the ceiling value of the GWAC. Awards are unlimited. The solicitation number is right here. So the current status is that it was an initial document, a set of documents were issued, but the actual final draft RFP was issued on November 15th. So this is the time to really take that draft document and get to work. The due date right now, we're not really sure, because I'm sure they're also getting a lot of questions, and it might delay it a little bit to try to better the RFP documents to answer some of those questions. But they are expecting it to be issued sometime in January or February timeframe. And so, by the way, for the draft RFP that it has been issued, the government does expect everybody to submit questions and any comments, any ambiguous areas and things like that back to the government by December 31st, 2022. There are 8 domains. We've got management and advisory, technical and engineering, research and development, intelligence, enterprise solutions, environmental, facilities, and logistics. Then they have additional functional areas for integrated services that include financial, human capital, marketing, public relations, social services, business administration, IT services, security and protection, transportation, and medical services. The maximum score is 50 for both small business and the unrestricted. Minimum qualification score is 36 for all small business domains, 42 for unrestricted on all domains except for the enterprise solutions, and 45 for the unrestricted enterprise solutions. The key players for small businesses: the 5 projects that must be provided should give 35 to 45 points, or 70 to 90% of the score, depending on the domain. And for the unrestricted, the 5 projects that's used as reference should give between 35 to 43 points, or 70 to 86% of the total score, depending, again, on the domain. So the project's magnitude. These are for your references, the values of your projects. Management advisory, technical and engineering, intelligence services, and logistics should be over $500,000 in value for small businesses and over $1 million in value for unrestricted. For enterprise solutions, they really haven't provided the magnitude for small businesses, but for unrestricted, it should be 50 million, over 50 million. For environmental and facilities, it should be $250,000 in value for small businesses. For environmental, it's unrestricted is over 1 million and 500,000 for the unrestricted under facilities. All projects should have been completed or awarded within the last 5 years. Ongoing projects must have at least 1 year of performance. So if this has been released and you just won this contract in September that you think is perfectly suited, it won't count because you do not have 1 year's of performance on that contract. Again, the magnitude of the project is an annual value, and this is very important. So if it's 500,000, it means that you would have earned at least $500,000 per year on that contract. So a 5-year contract of 2.3 million would have an annual value of 460,000. So 2.3, you divide it by 5 to come up with what your annual value is. It wouldn't be acceptable if you're under the $500,000. So look at your contracts, look at your total value, including option years, and then divide it over the 5 years to come up to make sure that it's at least $500,000 of value, total value over the year. Ab, did you want to take over from here, or would you like me to continue?
Yes, okay. So from here on, we're going to discuss some of our experience during the past self-scoring projects, then trying to convey these to you. So per our experience, the most important factor by far is compliance, especially in this one on OASIS Plus. Essentially, you can calculate the score, but if you do not do compliance issues properly, you're not going to win the contract. So compliance, and compliance, that's the motto, and we should actually look into that even further. Some of the other problems that might go wrong: misunderstanding the requirements. One example was what just right now Muge was discussing about the annual value. So, and there are a lot of that in the RFP text. So you really need to read it properly to understand the requirements. Not getting proper signatures from contracting officers on time. I'm going to get to that, but we might be needing a lot of work with our on our current projects to make them compliant with the requirements. In other words, substantiate our claim. And to do that, we might have to chase around with the contracting officers and things like that. And so you need time on that. Not maximizing your score, including partnering. Many times, you might be able to actually maximize your score, but you don't actually take advantage of the wording in the RFP, the way you can actually use the contracts and get more score. This is especially crucial if you're on the edge of the threshold of if you're a small business, 36, and if you're a large business, 42, and you want to make sure that you're at least a few points above that. And to do that, you really need to maximize your score, including partnering, and I'll get to that later. Not substantiating your score properly. Again, you might actually deserve that score, but if you don't substantiate it properly, provide the proper documentation in the proper way, you're not going to get that score. So that's one of the things that do go wrong sometimes. Stretching the scores too far, sometimes they actually disqualify companies. I've seen one or two cases in which the companies have actually stretched their score too far. So you have to be careful of that. And then not submitting the proposal correctly to Symphony. Symphony is an online website that the government has created. The previous OASIS was submitted through that, and this one is going to use that. It's not a very user-friendly system, so you have to make sure that you don't make any mistakes. I do remember one large company actually submitting the wrong documents for their financials, and they ran into deep trouble due to that. So this is something that needs to be really checked and reviewed multiple times. Now, just to give you an idea of compliance, I always show this to our clients. We don't have exact numbers for other self-scoring, but for HCATs, the government did provide some information. And if you look at, for example, the proposals submitted for HCATs under small business, 66 out of the 95, which is a little bit less than 75%, perhaps around 70%, were disqualified due to being non-compliant. On the unrestricted side, again, you see that it's nearly 50% that were eliminated from the race because of being non-compliant. So, of course, this was 2-3 years ago, and companies have learned more about self-scoring, and they know how to do it. But overall, that's the main problem, compliance, which eliminates people from the race. So you have to be careful about that. Now, let's discuss a little bit more in detail as what the common problems that you might face will be. First of all, we'll go into the administrative issues. Missing contract signatures. It might seem very trivial, but I've seen it multiple times with small and large businesses. Doesn't matter. At the time that you got the contract, you were so happy that you didn't look and realize that it wasn't properly signed by the contracting officer. So now you want to use it as substantiation, and it doesn't have a contract signature. So you have to chase around the contracting officer who might not be at that office, who might have left the government, and all that. So you're going to have a lot of problems. So that's one of the issues we usually run into preparing our contract documentation. Incomplete or missing CPARS reports. This time, fortunately, the ranking or the scoring system is not going to give you more score if you have an excellent or very good or acceptable system. As long as you have an acceptable CPARS report, you get the score. However, there are many cases that we usually run into that companies don't have a CPAR for a good project. The contracting officer just has not issued it, or there is an interim report, and you have to, again, chase the contracting officer and get that report, or fill out some special forms that come with the OASIS RFP in case the project doesn't have a CPAR. So that's, again, something that you need time to actually go after. Incorrect contract NAICS code designation or PSC code designation. If your contract does have the NAICS code written on it, the substantiation process is much easier. You don't have to provide any other documents as long as the contract provides the proper NAICS code for the domain that you're going after. But many times the NAICS code is not correct. And again, you have to, chase down the contracting officer and get it corrected, or get a form filled out. So that's another thing that you should look for. Inconclusive scope information. Let me explain what this is. First of all, you can use commercial contracts for OASIS Plus. So it doesn't have to be necessarily federal contracts that you use. Now, the experience we've had with commercial contracts is that usually the scope is very vague, and obviously it doesn't say what NAICS code it covers. So you have to, and the scope that is explained, the statement of work is very vague, very short. So you can't really prove that it is in that domain. So many times you have to get amendments from the contracting, from the client, and things like that. So that, again, takes time. Something that large businesses are facing is scattered document management. I have personally run into that with many large clients. The problem is that they have many offices throughout the US, and they have program managers who are in charge of document management for those offices. So they don't have a centralized system with all the documentation. They might have a centralized system that has the information, but the documentation might be scattered. So that will take time. And so that's another reason you should start early. Incomplete or unknown personnel information. You get a few points depending on the domain that you're going after. If you have more information about your personnel, how many personnel you used in a project that were full FTE, or whether they had a secret or a top secret facility clearance, things like that. So information about your personnel that you used in the contracts is important, and you really need to have those in one place to actually go and look into them. The same thing stands for subcontractors. For the 5 contracts that you actually need to provide, you need to know, for example, whether you had 3 or more subcontractors, and you get a score for that, a point for that. But you have to substantiate it. So you have to prove that you have to have the contracts with those subcontractors provided, what their scope of work was, and all that. So again, these are the information that you need to have around. And then finally, in terms of administrative issues, mistakes in uploading to Symphony, as I mentioned, you might have everything in place, but if you make mistakes in uploading the information, naming the documents properly, and then submitting them to the proper location in Symphony, you're going to run into problems. Another area that we should discuss are systems and certifications issues, because you get a few points with regards to, as Muge explained, CMMI or ISO certifications, secret or top secret facility clearances, environmental certificates, all that, depending on the domain that you're going for. Now, there are some issues that we usually run into those. For example, missing government documentation. These certifications, for example, a government-approved accounting system, you get a score for that. Now, it has to have proof that government documents signed by the government, that you do have that. So having those documents in place is another important thing, and something that you should look for. Interim and applied cases for certifications. For example, you need time if you have applied for a certification to actually push that agency, whether it's a commercial one like for ISO or CMMI, or if it's a government one like accounting system and that sort of thing, to actually push them to get the certificates before the RFP is out, the due date. So that's why you need time. And same thing for interim. For example, some companies might have interim secret clearance, and they're waiting to get the full one. So that's, again, you use this time to actually go for that. Missing POC information. That's one of the problems we face, because for many of these certificates, you need to provide the POC of the agency or the commercial organization that provided you that certification or systems, and name, contact info, and all that. So that's something that you should be prepared to have. Again, we have the same situation here for large businesses, a scattered document management that we have run into. So large businesses should be aware that they should actually be prepared to have all these documents available. They usually have them, but sometimes they're all spread out throughout the nation. So that's another issue. And then inconclusive documents. When I say that is because many of these certificates and systems, they might not have been signed by the proper U.S. Government agency, but have been, provided to you by another agency, and you're not just sure whether you're going to get that point or not. So that's why, if you know it now, if you you can actually send in questions to the government in that regard, and get responses ahead of time. And then not enough time to apply for some of these certifications. If you have enough time, you might actually go for it and get the certification in time. But if you leave this till the RFP is out or something like that, then you just don't have the time to actually get these systems and certifications. Some of the other general issues that we have run into per our experience is overall not providing proper substantiation. You do have the contract, you do have the score, but you just don't show the proper documentation. You don't do the proper highlighting. And in effect, when you send everything to the government and they review it, they don't give you the score, even though you deserve it. So that's one of the things that you should be careful about. Poor partnering, starting late, going after partners, and then companies have, are already dedicated to other teams, and you just don't find the proper partners. So start looking for partners as soon as possible. Obviously, before you start looking for partners, first you need to know if you need them or not. Many companies don't need them because they have sufficient score, but many companies do need them. So again, this is something that you should do after you do an assessment of your initial assessment of your score. Another problem that might come into view is incomplete or insufficient reviews and compliance checks. Per our experience, at least 2 rounds of reviews and compliance checks must be done for the proposal to ensure that there are no mistakes, because there are a lot of loopholes and mistakes that are possible. So that is usually done. And our recommendation is that reviews and compliance checks should be done by a third party, because that's where separate set of eyes will get those mistakes, where at least that's our experience. Anyways, improper pre-qualification. When I say that, Muge did explain that we do have a system for pre-qualification. I'll show you a little bit more on that. But the point is that you might actually delve into OASIS Plus and think that you can actually get a contract and award on it, whereas you just don't have enough score, and you should have started with partnering very early. So pre-qualification and checking your eligibility is really important, especially for smaller businesses who are unsure whether they have the score or not. So that's something we suggest that you go after. Proper score assessment. Usually overqualification, that's something that you must be aware of or be wary of, because usually you want to give yourself the maximum score. Well, what we usually tell our clients and do it for them is that we give them a minimum and maximum. Minimum would be that we will be very conservative in providing the score, and then maximum would be with extreme leeway. So that's something that usually people run into, thinking that they're going to have the score, whereas they're just a little bit too wishful. So all of this turns into starting late. That's the main issue. I hope I have conveyed the problems that you might be facing, whether you're small or a large business, in preparing the proposal if you start late. So the most important thing is to start now and start assessing your score, and then moving forward from there. So that's the main message of this webinar, and why I explained it this way. So what we suggest for win strategy is obviously start now. Check compliance, think compliance, eat compliance. Compliance, as I said, is the most important issue in self-scoring projects. The 5 qualifying projects, as Muge explained, have the highest percentage of score, they are the king. So you should concentrate there instead of concentrating on the others. I'm not saying that those others don't count, but getting the best 5 qualifying projects is the key. Maximize the use of your commercial projects. For those companies who do a lot of commercial projects, you don't have to look around for 1 or 2 federal projects that you have. You can actually go for your commercial projects. You might have only commercial projects. Again, if they have the proper features, you might get a very good score. There is a section for in each domain that is specifically about federal contracts, but the score there is not very high, so you don't lose that much if you have very good commercial projects. So that's something that you shouldn't forget. And then maximizing your score. I've said use a per contract scoring system and assessment. I'm going to show you what we use in the next slide, and I'll show you it online. But you should always consider how to maximize your score to make sure that you are at least, this is what we are suggesting to our clients, at least 5 points above the threshold, at least. So if the threshold for small business is 36, you should go for 41 with all possible effects. And for large businesses, if it's the minimum is the threshold is 42, you should go for 47. Go for that. So it is important to understand which 5 contracts you should pick to give you the highest score. And there's a system for that. I'll be showing that in a minute. Next is make full use of partnering and multiple partners. This is again for smaller businesses or for larger businesses anyway, who want to make sure that they have loopholes or they have shortages in some areas, and they want to use partners to actually ensure that their score is higher. Now, in OASIS Plus, you can have both joint ventures and prime subcontract relationship. So both of those can be used for this. And then outsource the proposal writing system if this is your first time. If it's not your first time and you're comfortable with it, by all means, do it yourself. But absolutely outsource for reviews, because I've seen many cases with very excellent proposal managers who have prepared their own proposals, but they just don't see the problem because they're just used to it. So it's really important, at least our suggestion is that you outsource for reviews. Now, this is a sample, as I mentioned here, self-scoring matrix. And this is a sample self-scoring matrix. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go live and share my screen to you so you can actually see it in Excel, and then we'll go from there. 1 minute, please. Okay. Okay, I hope you can see my screen. This is one of the score sheets that we prepared for a client. They had about 9 projects. Each line, for example, this line is one contract that I've highlighted. So each line is a contract. And based on the requirements of the RFP, we have scored each contract separately. So I know that this first one, this Navy one, gets 11 points, whereas the second one just gets 6 points, 9 points, 8 points, 10 points. This way, if you have multiple contracts, you can actually see which ones are the best to use in the RFP. Even if you have only 2, then you know that you need partners who actually can add up to those. So this helps both small businesses and large businesses in selecting the best 5 to use. And this system automatically turns off those projects. For example, this project is $984,000 for a 2-year period. So the annual period is annual revenue is 492, which is less than 500,000. So we get an N and no for this contract. So this contract cannot be used as one of the 5 qualifying projects. Or this one, the value is correct, but the NAICS code is not correct. The NAICS code is not in the domain, so it cannot be used as one of the qualifying projects. So this system, or whatever system you have in place for yourself, we use this for our clients, but this system helps you select the best 5 contracts, and also when partners come in and bring in their contracts, you can actually check the score that they have. So now let me go back to the slide. Oh, before I start the slide again, let me show you something else as well. I mentioned that we do a pre-qualification for our clients, usually small businesses, but some large businesses require it too. In the pre-qualification, we'll send you a questionnaire. You fill out the questionnaire, which usually takes an hour, and then we work on that questionnaire. One of our proposal managers works on it, and then we get back to you with a report, with a comprehensive report. This is a sample report that we usually prepare. From the table of content, you can see what we will provide you: a quantitative assessment.
Ab, we can't see the screen right now.
Oh, sorry.
No problem.
Okay. Let me start it.
Here we go.
You can see that?
Yes.
Okay, good. So this is the report. This is the qualitative report that we are providing to our clients. If I go through the table of contents, you'll see that there is a quantitative assessment, questionnaire and responses, estimated score sheet that we have come up with, the assumptions that we have made, and then we go into the qualitative assessment, summary findings and recommendations. Recommendations on partnering, recommendation on maximizing score, final go, no-go recommendation at this stage, and then the steps you can take from there on. So I'll just scroll because we don't have that much time. I'll just scroll through this so you can see what the quantitative assessments would be. These are the questionnaire that you can see, the different things that this client has filled out. And then this is the score sheet that we have come up with. For example, on the QP relevance, of the 20 points, they have gotten the 20. And here you can see the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth project and what score they got. So this is the result of the review that we have done. So for this client, they got 44 out of 50, which is 8 over the 36 threshold. And then we have mentioned our assumptions. And then in the next stage, we go into the qualitative assessment of what we think. So this is the service that we are providing to our clients for eligibility test and pre-qualification. So let me start this again. The services we are providing are essentially, we provide free consultation. As I mentioned, we do the pre-qualification assessment as I showed you right now. And then we do full proposal development. We will have a dedicated proposal team for that proposal. And then we do, the process is essentially score assessment and optimization, full proposal assembly, and then full and multiple compliance checks, and finally uploading to Symphony. We also, for those companies who do it themselves, we do review and auditing, 2 rounds of compliance checks, score optimization checks, and uploading to Symphony. So these are different services that we provide. Here is my contact info on Marone 3D, who's our sales, in case you want to contact them. And by that, we come to the Q&A section. And if you have not put in your questions by now, you can go ahead and put in your questions, and we'll go through them during the 15 minutes that's been left for us. I should mention that even if we don't have the time to actually answer your question, we'll go through all this Q&A and respond back to you. So just in case, please put in your email and we'll respond back with our responses. So Muge, go ahead, please.
Okay, so I have a question. The first one I see is, when is the final RFP dropping and how long will the onboarding window be? Typically, right now what they said is sometime at the end of January to the beginning part of February. It's not clear yet. It might even be delayed. However, they typically give us about 30-day responses, but we have seen in the previous GWACs, they have been extended. I mean, they'll get extended to 2 months, 3-month turnaround. So it just depends on how many questions they get. Are there problems with the Symphony side? There's so many factors, but right now, just to answer your question, we're thinking sometime towards the end of January, we expect a 30-day response. There's a question regarding the draft RFP talks about a JV and CTA types. Sorry, I'm missing as questions get noted. And then I guess, one second, I've lost the question. Sorry about that. You noted a prime sub. Can you talk through that a little bit more? Absolutely. So there are 2 types of contractor teaming agreements, CTAs. One of them we call a CTA1, which is essentially a joint venture. If you're forming a joint venture, you want to make sure that you bring on all of the partners that's going to enhance and bring in the scoring that you need to maximize it. That gets to be a joint venture. You register that as a joint venture company. You get it registered in SAM, get the UEI, etc., so you can upload it to Symphony as a JV. That's a CTA1. A CTA2 is essentially a prime subcontractor relationship. You can bring in as many subcontractors as you want, probably not more than 3 or 4, just to augment, again, enhance your offering where you're getting past performance references and things like that from them. There will be language on what the CTA agreements need to look like. They also have to be signed, and it does get uploaded onto the Symphony at the time of submission, including your CTA1, so your joint venture agreements. We talked about what is the difference between the draft RFP and the solicitation from the 2019 onboarding? Not too many differences. With OASIS compared to other GWACs, again, as we talked about through, is compliance, but they also have these strict naming conventions with OASIS. But as far as the draft RFP, the initial solution that came out put in some information, which was some information on it, but the draft RFP will be as close to the final RFP as possible. They may make some changes based on the questions that they get.
One point, Muge, I wanted to add actually is that there is a major difference here in OASIS Plus compared to the others, in that all the others, or most of them, were competitive in nature. In other words, depending on the score you got, they compared it to others, and then they would say, hey, we are going to pick 150 for this GWAC, so they would pick the highest 150 companies from that scoring sheet. Here, that's not the case. Here, if you're above that threshold, you are awarded. Of course, you have to be, you have to have the proper justification and everything. So if everything is okay and you're above the threshold, you get the contract. So this is the major difference compared to the previous ones. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, and another thing is this one is now OASIS Plus, and they've opened it up for many domains where if we recall the one in 2019, that was a specific pool. It was focused on one thing, and it was small business set aside and et cetera. Exactly. So this one is covering a lot more domains than the one in 2019 did.
Exactly.
Is the solicitation out yet? Will it be posted on SAM or eBuy? As we talked about it, the draft was released in November, on November 15th. It will be posted on SAM. It is not an eBuy. It's open for everybody. Can a large do a response as prime under a large and partner on a small business response? Ab, if I'm not, just to be correct, small business has to partner with small businesses. You cannot have a large business on your company.
Right, that's correct.
CTA agreement.
That's correct. The other way around is okay. So small businesses can actually participate in unrestricted, but the other way doesn't work.
Correct. Our DCA compliance report was 2012. Is it still valid? Do we have to redo this again? You need to check with your government agency who issued it. Typically, it should be valid. The only time it changes is if you have significant changes to your your accounting system and things like that. But do check with DCAA on your report and its validity. So there's a question. It says, hopefully this is not a dumb question. No questions are dumb. OASIS Plus states it's a non-IT services contract. Does that mean this vehicle will not be used by the federal agencies to procure IT services? So there are multiple domains. This contract vehicle will be used by the government and not just GSA, other government agencies as well. And there are IT services within a domain. You do want to go ahead and look at all the domains that are available, and you will see the ones that fall under the IT.
Let me add something to this. First of all, in terms of scoring, the 5 projects that you provide cannot be pure IT. So the domain does not cover pure IT. Say, for example, the project is a software engineering project. That will not be acceptable. But there are a few points that you can get if you can actually prove, in addition to what that domain has, in case you did some IT work, you get extra scores for that. However, IT, as you know, is a very vague these days issue. So many of these research and development or engineering projects are essentially IT, what we discussed. But if you want to distinguish it, if it's pure software engineering, you can't use it. Other than that, there is a very vague line between engineering and other types of IT. So again, it's a case by case that needs to be reviewed and seen if we can use them or not. Over.
Thank you. There's some questions regarding getting a link to Symphony, or is Symphony a program? So Symphony is going to be the portal that's used to upload all of the documents. They have actually gotten much better. They used to have a lot of kinks or problems with it, but it's going to be used predominantly. And as you enter your information, and as Ab mentioned before too, you really need to kind of practice, look at the videos and things like that on how to work your way around Symphony, because you might miss a specific tab and not get the score you need. Now, there is a link to Symphony. Let me try to post it here. And that should work for you. You have to go in and register. But we should also wait for the final RFP to come out. I'm pretty sure they're going to use the same link. So you can go ahead and use it and get registered there. Get a copy of this presentation. I think Ab mentioned you can download it to the right of the screen. Is that correct, Ab, to get a copy of the presentation?
Yes, the slides you can download right now, and then the video clip will be sent within 24 hours to all those who registered.
How about a commercial project? Do they count? Yes, they do. We talked about that. If you have an IDIQ of 4 million divided by 5 meets $500,000 nearly, but you have not received the actual revenues of 5,000, does the contract value dictate or actual receipts dictate compliance? Ab, do you want to explain how we do that dividing again, just in case?
Sure. There are two types of projects. Some projects are finished. When they're finished, so you actually calculate the obligated amount, the amount paid to you. So the contract might have said $5 million, but they actually paid you $7 million, or they paid you $2 million. You have to actually calculate that, the amount paid, or as they say, obligated. So if the project is finished, you use that. If the project is ongoing, then you use what is supposed to be. So if it says $5 million, but only $1 million has been paid and it's not finished yet, as far as your calculation is concerned, you use that 5 million and then divide it by the total expected duration of the contract, not what actually has happened. So if it's finished, you calculate per what's happened. If it's not finished, you do it per contract, even though it hasn't materialized yet.
Thank you. How many domains must a small business bidder bid? If you have past performance on all of the domains, there's no restriction. You can submit a bid for all of the domains.
The minimum is 1.
What category would facilities management fall under? If I'm not mistaken, there's actually a facility management. There's a facilities domain. Can a joint venture submit and also the underlying company separately submit? Yes, a joint venture can submit. You could do, so there's a little bit of a fine line here. And they'll probably come up with more clarification on that. If you happen to be on another team and you're bidding the same domain, you cannot use the same past performance references. You're going to have to use different past performance references. If you're bidding with other companies on a different domain, then you can use the same past performance references you used for, let's say you had for T&E, you used the past performance reference, and that was with your joint venture teaming partners, and then you decided to go and bid with small business partners on another domain, then you can use that same past performance. If not, you're going to have to use another. So there is no restriction on getting on other teams and also doing a joint venture. You just have to be careful on which past performance references you're using and which domains. Let me just go back up to the top. I think I can. Is it a separate bid per domain or one bid with multiple domains selected? As we mentioned, you can bid definitely one, but you can bid on as many domains as you want. Do we need 5 qualification contracts per domain? Yes.
In other words, to get the good score, you need 5. You can actually provide 4, but you just don't get the good score. So that's where you need to partner and get that 5th one in.
If we have 2 contracts, initial award and award on recompete, can we use both contracts as separate qualifying projects? Yes, they probably have different contract numbers anyway. Can a company qualify as a small and large business for different domains? If that's dictated by the NAICS code. If you qualify as a small business and a large, depending on what the NAICS code is, yes.
Okay, Muge, I think we've run out of time.
Okay.
I wanted to thank everyone for attending. As I said, we will have a a webinar for unrestricted and a separate webinar for small businesses that we will go into details about the scoring system for OASIS Plus. That's next week, and we'll be sending you the links for those. And the recording of this webinar will be sent to you within 24 hours. So I thank everyone for participating and look forward to seeing you again next week. Thank you so much.
Thank you.